And now, stand-up community subscribers and listeners from around the globe, it's time to Stand Up with Pete Dominic, where we ask the important questions that impact you, your family, and your community. Such as, could I curb my addiction to corn nuts by substituting creamed corn drenched in kosher salt? And with Valentine's Day behind us, where can I get in line for those specially priced day-old pastries? And now, the podcast host who is perfectly okay with pastries as long as they're nacho-flavored, Pete Dominic!
Yes, sir, that's right. They have nacho-flavored pastries. That sounds absolutely disgusting in a horrible way to start the show, but I've got to go with it. Them's the rules of improvisation. Hello, thank you, Pete Co., and hello, everybody. Welcome to today's episode of Stand Up. I've got two excellent guests joining me today. I've got Clint Watts, plenty of national security issues to talk about with Clint. And I had an almost hour-long conversation with comedian, writer, performer, the great Christopher Titus. Was really interesting as well. Very excited for you to hear both of those conversations. Thank you to everybody who gave out such nice compliments on yesterday's conversation. Had the great Vicky Body Robinson on, and people are still commenting on how great that was. Vicky, so amazing. If you are a listener who would love to come on the show at some point, you got something to offer, a story to tell, reach out, standupwithpete@gmail.com. But right now, I've got a lot of news to get to. It's time for The Last 24. All right. Hello and welcome to the news, everybody. Let's take a look at what happened on yesterday, on the day before today, the last 24, if you will. A lot of people still reacting to the Super Bowl on Monday. Just a couple quick clips. Here's Bomani Jones, and I mean reacting to the halftime show, I should say. Here's Bomani Jones on Joy Reid's show on MSNBC last night.
But I got to ask you, while we're here on this, and you mentioned Charlie Kirk and Ted Nugent, why we spend so much time talking about unimportant people with insincere intentions? Like, the only people on that side of things that I really think had a problem with that halftime show, as you described, are people who make money by saying they have a problem with it. Like, right. I went to school in a town in Texas with 1,500 people. I see what those people post about on Facebook, and I'm here to tell you, they was knocking that Dre and Snoop in the parking lot. They love that stuff, right? The people who are in the business of saying they don't, whatever, they ain't put them on the halftime show for a small number of people. It's because quietly everybody loves the G-Funk. This was a universal sort of thing. And Charlie Kirk only comes up in my life when people who say they don't agree with him talk about him in places where we give him more attention than he deserves. We have to stop.
All right, Bomani Jones knocking it out of the park with that commentary, talking about who's talking about it. Yeah, very good. And then Eddie Glaude also on MSNBC, Deadline White House with White House Deadline, what's that show called with Nicole Wallace?
You know, the NFL is no different than most businesses and corporations across the country, right? Most of us just, we think of diversity and inclusion as just simply compliance. We checked the box. We did this, so we're in compliance with the rule. And we see this with the NFL. Look, I decided not to watch the Super Bowl. I've in some ways quit football. I'm a lifelong Steelers fan. I grew up on the Steel Curtain. But I am tired of consuming a league that takes me for granted, that has no real investment in issues of diversity. I mean, look how long it took Lovie Smith to become head coach again. He took the Bears to the Super Bowl, and now they just handed him. I don't know what kind of hand he was just handed with the Houston Texans. I hope they give him time to actually do something. But at the end of the day, the NFL is doing what most corporations across the country is doing, and I think consumers like me, we just need to make a choice and to bring pressure to bear. And I thank God President Biden said what he said last night on national television. It's just basic generic decency. But these days, decency is in short supply.
Well said, Eddie Glaude. Well said, as always. Decency these days in short supply. Now, here's Anna Navarro real quick over at The View on this.
Walking. I do want to say, though, as celebratory as it was, as wonderful as it was, I think it's important not to let the NFL off the hook and not to lose the focus on the conversation about racial equity in hiring management and hiring coaches.
What do you call Eminem?
What do I mean?
Yeah, I just wanted.
Yeah, I mean, Brian Flores. I think Brian Flores has opened up a can of worms that should not be. This is great. And this was a celebration of hip hop. And it was all of these wonderful black artists plus Eminem doing their thing. And we should applaud the NFL for doing that. But you know what? You got to hire some coaches.
Yeah, that's the least they have to do to make things better for people of color in this country and in that league. But now let's get to another sport, another controversy. It's the doping controversy over in China with a Russian skater. Her name is Kamila Valieva, and she's been cleared to keep competing at the Beijing Olympics, even though she tested positive for a banned substance, apparently. A lot of questions about this, but here are two veteran figure skaters, Tara Lipinski and Johnny Weir on the NBC broadcast, weighing in on why this is such a big deal and why it matters.
Well, I strongly disagree with this decision. And, first I would like to say that Camila is only 15 years old. She is a minor, and I know firsthand what it's like just competing at an Olympic Games at 15 years old. I remember the overwhelming feelings and pressure that I felt. And for a young person, that's a lot to deal with. But with that being said, clean sport is the only thing that matters at an Olympic Games. And what we love about an Olympic Games is that we get to marvel at humans pushing athletic limits and doing the impossible, but with one caveat, to do it fairly and cleanly.
I have to condemn this decision with every ounce of my soul. The Olympics has to be clean, or it's not fair. If you won't play fair, then you can't play. It doesn't matter how old you are or the timing on when the test results have come in. You have to be responsible for what happens to your body and to compete at the Olympics. This is a slap in the face to the Olympic Games, to our sport, and to every athlete that's ever competed at the Olympics. Clean.
And let's get one more take from another former U.S. Olympic figure skater. This is Caitlin Weaver, and she was on CNN. I thought this was good.
No. I think she's getting very protected because she's a minor. She's able to continue competing at the Olympic Games with a positive drug test. My heart goes out to Sha'Carri Richardson. What about the people that can't compete because of the same rules? So I just don't understand why we have to treat this case differently. It's the Olympic Games. An athlete should be an athlete, and there should be a level playing field no matter.
All right, there you go. That's the latest scandal over there in the Chinese Olympic Games with a Russian skater. And let's come back here to Canada, though, where Prime Minister Justin Trudeau apparently taking a pretty big risk. He's decided to invoke the Emergencies Act, the first time it's been used in Canada's history, to put an end to the paralyzing truckers convoy. Politico says it's a big bet for a third-term prime minister, already facing criticism for politicizing the pandemic. Here is Justin Trudeau with the announcement yesterday.
The federal government has invoked the Emergencies Act to supplement provincial and territorial capacity to address the blockades and occupations. I want to be very clear. The scope of these measures will be time-limited, geographically targeted, as well as reasonable and proportionate to the threats they are meant to address.
Well, there you have it. Invoking the Emergencies Act is a measure of last resort in Canada. It gives the federal government enormous powers to quell the disturbances, shut down crowdfunding, and freeze the bank accounts of anyone assessed to be aiding in the demonstrations or the demonstrators. Justin Trudeau sounded a measure of both willfulness and desperation in a somber late afternoon press conference with cabinet members. That's yesterday in Canada, and not a very happy Valentine's Day there. Now let's go to another big story. Yesterday, I saw some of the anti-gun violence folks on TV, and I was wondering why. Well, it's because yesterday was 4 years since 17 students were murdered at his high school, Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida. And David Hogg and other activists, my old friend Igor Volsky, launching a new initiative called Shock Market, shockmarket.org, tracking gun violence losses under the current president, Joe Biden. Here is David Hogg on CNN.
Shockmarket.org is a website that helps tally the number of gun deaths and injuries that have happened in the time since President Biden took office. I think one of the things that I've thought about in this time is one of the first interviews that I had in the wake of the shooting, which was actually, I believe, on this show just about 4 years ago. And on that, one of the things that I remember most distinctly from that in the time since watching it, is when I was asked by the reporter, what do you want to say to politicians? And I said, we're the kids. You're the adults. You need to do something. It's 4 years later, and I'm 21 years old, and I'm an adult. We need to do something. And frankly, President Biden needs to do something, because there are certain things that he's leaving on the table that he can do right now, like creating a national office of gun violence prevention and a national director of gun violence prevention, and creating a comprehensive plan to dramatically reduce gun deaths before the State of the Union that he can do right now, regardless of the filibuster and regardless of what's going on in the Senate.
All right, there you go. That's what David Hogg and other activists are asking the Biden administration for. And Manuel Oliver, whose son Joaquin Oliver died during the Parkland school shooting, climbed a construction crane on Monday in protest of ongoing gun violence. He climbed up this 150-foot crane outside the White House, and he hung a banner from it that said 45,000 people died from gun violence on your watch. Shockmarket.org. Clearly, they were organizing together about this event, but a pretty big stunt, and I like that kind of stunt, by the way. All right, here's a couple more clips for you on Ukraine. Latest with Ukraine, Russia. This is State Department spokesman Ned Price, who never does a very good job, but laying out the situation as we speak here on Tuesday, the 15th of February, if you're listening that day.
A number of countries are now engaging on a bilateral basis with the Russian Federation, and we think that's a good thing. We think that is a good thing because these countries, including the French, including the Germans, they have done so in close and extensive coordination with the United States. As you know, President Biden has had now a couple opportunities to speak to President Macron. Chancellor Scholz was just in Washington, I believe it was last week, where he met with President Biden. Secretary Blinken was also in that meeting.
All right, well, let's get some more analysis from former ambassador to Russia, Mike McFaul.
Ambassador McFaul, I want to ask you about that reporting I read from the New York Times from Julian Barnes and Helene Cooper. We cover so much Russian disinformation, and we cover so many tentacles of the amplification here among American right-wing media. This feels like, I don't know if it's a counteroffensive, I don't know if it's completely unrelated, but it seems like pushing against that disinformation with the rapid release of accurate information has the potential, it would appear, in the view of the intelligence community, to give us, if not an advantage, some equal footing. What do you make of that strategy?
Well, I'd say two things, the wider context and then the specifics of what they've released. The wider context, Nicole, I'm pretty disappointed, actually. I think Putin is winning, and I don't even want to call it the information war. I want to call it the framing of this conflict. How many times in the last several weeks have you heard Americans from the left and the right, by the way, saying this is all about NATO expansion, going back to what Gorbachev said to Jim Baker 30 years ago, and basically saying we should give Putin what he wants? Those are huge information victories for Vladimir Putin, and that we debate that and speak hardly ever about annexation of Crimea, illegal recognition of Abkhazia and South Ossetia. Putin is winning that debate, and that's about the American domestic politics. On the specifics, though, I think I'm impressed by the aggressive way that the Biden administration has declassified information to help prepare the world for one of these preemptive strikes, for one of these false flags as a pretext for war. Putin has used it before. And today you have in Avril Haines, the director of national intelligence, and Bill Burns, the director of the CIA, people who have been policymakers before, people that have worked with the Biden team before, and therefore, I think, are going along with policy requests to declassify information in a much more rapid way. I fully support it.
All right, well, there you go, and we'll get more analysis from Clint Watts coming up. That's all the audio I've got for you on today's show, but now it's time for a whole bunch more headlines and what I call the news dump, a dump of news, a whole bunch of headlines. Pete Cole, what have you got for me today?
Aussie record lamb increase, many run and jump. They're exported for your table on today's news dump.
There you go. An Aussie record lamb increase is what he said. Australian lamb output hit record level in 2023. That is the story Pete is jingling about today. All right, what else do we have for you? Well, an unexpected development in Sarah Palin's libel lawsuit against the New York Times. Apparently, a federal judge overseeing the case on Monday said he's planning to dismiss the lawsuit. He'll allow the jury to continue deliberating, but the U.S. District Judge Jed Rakoff, that's a fun name, said Palin's lawyers had failed to prove that the Times had knowingly published false information about the former Alaska governor in 2017 editorial or acted with a reckless disregard for the truth, according to The Hill. An American military member, naval engineer, has been caught trying to sell submarine secrets. Pleaded guilty to trying to pass information about American nuclear-powered warships to a foreign country. Don't know which country, but this 43-year-old guy pled guilty in a federal court in West Virginia. He's going to be serving 12 to 17 years in prison. He and his wife were arrested last October after apparently he got caught trying to do dead drops on files and getting paid in cryptocurrency. Sounds like a real spy novel gone wrong, but this is an American naval engineer caught trying to sell secrets to nuclear subs. Nabbed him. Not good. One of the stars of the Super Bowl apparently welcomed the sun right after the game was over. How about that? The Rams wide receiver Van Jefferson and his wife Samaria Jefferson welcomed their second child, a son, following the historic Super Bowl win on Sunday. He shared a photo on Instagram hugging his newborn, and it's just a wonderful story I thought I'd share with you. Another big breaking story on the Trump Organization, whose accounting firm says 10 years of financial statements apparently are unreliable. Former President Donald Trump's longtime accounting firm informed the Trump Organization last week it should no longer rely on nearly 10 years worth of financial statements, that they would no longer be their accountants as well, citing a conflict of interest. The company also advised the Trump Organization to inform any recipients of the statement, such as lenders or insurers, to not rely on the statements. This is a huge story, and one that I think we're going to hear a lot more about in the coming days and weeks. Well, this was a scary story out of Kentucky. I mean, what other kind of story is there? Oh, I kid the Kentucky folks. But a Democratic mayoral candidate in Kentucky's largest city was apparently shot at. A man stormed his campaign headquarters and fired a weapon directly at him. Craig Greenberg, running for mayor of Louisville, said he was at his campaign office with 4 colleagues when a man appeared in the doorway with a weapon. Despite one bullet coming so close that it grazed his sweater and shirt, no one was physically harmed. Kentucky governor, of course, decried the attempt on Greenberg's life, called for swift action to punish the perpetrator, who appears to have acted alone. They're still trying to figure out his motive. I'm betting he didn't like the mayor is the main motive. I'm not exactly a detective, but I'm betting he didn't like that guy running for mayor. He's not mayor yet. But that's certainly going to bring him a much higher profile. So mission unaccomplished. Backfire. All right, what else can I tell you? Washington, D.C. has announced it's going to end vaccine and mask mandates. What else? Apparently, more news on Trump. He apparently used a Secret Service agent's phone to call Melania Trump after the whole Stormy Daniels report, which is really weird and awful and completely unsurprising. The United States Senate passed a bill to make a former internment camp a National Historic Site. The bill would establish Amachi National Historic Site, a former Japanese-American incarceration facility located outside Grenada in southeast Colorado, as part of the National Park System. The legislation passed last year, passed the House, and was shepherded in by Colorado representatives. Colorado senators celebrating the bill's passage in the Senate. However, Senator Mike Lee of Utah tried to hold it up again because he didn't think there should be a commemoration, apparently. I don't know. I shouldn't misrepresent his views, but I just saw that headline. The incarceration of Japanese Americans during World War II at sites like Amachi is a shameful part of our country's history. Our bill will preserve Amachi's story to ensure future generations can learn from this dark chapter in our history, said Colorado Senator Michael Bennett. I'm not sure I'm pronouncing it right, but I hope it's Amache. Otherwise, I just really offended people. Also, a correction. During the news dump last week, I said that I thought the actor, the British actor, the Scottish actor from Succession got it wrong when Brian Cox got it wrong when he referred to public schools as instead of private schools. I got like 15 emails from people on that. I really appreciate those corrections. I did figure it out, and I'm sorry. Never stop correcting me on that shit, because I don't mind being embarrassed and getting it wrong, but I like to issue a correction whenever possible. And this just in, a trio of women will be hosting this year's Oscars. Comedians Wanda Sykes and Amy Schumer, both of who I know, and actress Regina Hall have been tapped to co-host the March 27th ceremony on ABC, according to Variety reporting on Monday. Well, that'll be fun. 3 different hosts, all women, all funny. That should be great. Right? Who's watching? Not me. The prosecution in the George Floyd civil rights trial has rested its case, according to the Associated Press on Monday. They brought their last witness. Federal prosecutors spent 3 weeks presenting their case. The defense attorneys are expected to start presenting witnesses today, according to the Associated Press. All right, well, that is your news dump for Tuesday, the 15th of February, 2022, and I can't do it without your support, so if you haven't signed up for a paid subscription, now is your day to do just that. Let's go, folks. Let's get those subscriptions going. You can up your subscription if you want as well anytime. Go to standupwithpete.com or patreon.com/Pete Dominic. Coming up, a wide-ranging conversation with hilarious and brilliant comedian Christopher Titus, who I've known most of my career, certainly knew of his work when I was starting out as a comedian, when I was coming up in the ranks. He had his own show on Fox, and he was a big deal. It was so great to catch up with him. But first, I caught up with my friend Clint Watts, who is a national security expert, former Army, former FBI, the author of Messing with the Enemy, Surviving in a Social Media World of Hackers, Terrorists, Russians, and Fake News. He's got an awesome Substack, clintwatts.substack.com. Follow him on Twitter at Selected Wisdom. He's an MSNBC national security contributor and basically tracks terrorists both domestically and abroad. Now at the Foreign Policy Research Institute. And, well, what else can I say about Clint? Always love catching up with him. And we started with something easy, his workout routine. Check him out on Twitter at Selected Wisdom, and check him out right now on Stand Up, Clint Watts. Clint Watts joins me now, and Clint, I'm very happy to see you. And let's start off with an easy question, just to break in our conversation. I look at you as a guy who is healthy, physically in good shape, but yet still sits in front of a computer a ton of hours. So my question to you is, what is your practice? What with your work, so much of your work being sitting there in front of that screen, how do you keep such a great figure?
I am not, by the way. So over the last 2 years, well, that's not true. I actually started my re-kick today because I feel like I'm 30 days from being out of the pandemic. So I used to run a lot. I cannot do it as much anymore because hips and ankles, I can feel it. Because I was in the Army, I was carrying heavy weight and stuff, and it was all fine until probably like 48, and then my ankle popped walking down the stairs, and I couldn't run for 3 months. So I could tell. So I got a rowing machine, one of those ones with the water in it.
Oh yeah,
I love it. I mean, it smokes me. Yeah, it's a real good workout. I still lift weights a little bit.
How long? That's a tough purchase because you can't hang a shirt on it. It serves no other purpose. It's an awkward shape, and it's quite a commitment to purchase that. So, how many minutes will you spend on the rowing machine each day, and how long?
Or not even every day. Okay. If I get 2 to 3 times a week, 20 minutes.
Oh, it's okay.
Good. Yeah,
all right.
You can get a very good workout in 20 minutes with the rowing machine, and I use. Gosh, what's the name of it? I'm spacing on the name right now.
Why is the water so special? I got to look at one of these now.
You feel like you're really rowing. I think that's the trick. And what's great about it is it has a digital interface. Gosh, why can't I remember the name of it all of a sudden?
The Ergata. Do you have the Ergata?
Ergata, that's what it is. Yeah.
I'm looking it up.
I love the Ergata because it keeps track and you do races, and so they record everyone's times in their algorithm, so you feel like you're racing against like 70 other people.
You like that competitive thing?
I don't know that I like it that much because I'm losing a lot now. Like I did it really well for a while and it calibrated me high. Now I get my ass kicked.
See,
like,
I'm afraid I'll put my age in there and everybody else is lying, and I'm actually doing a lot better than I am against the other 46-year-old fellas.
Yes. So I am, at 49, I am not winning too many.
Is it true? I'm looking at a video of you here on the Ergata, and you're wearing one of those orange life vests. Why do you wear a life jacket while is it make it harder?
Yeah, well, part of it is I want to know what it's going to be like when I'm rowing on real water, so I just keep it on all the time. A
lot of people listening are wondering why you didn't ask where the video I found was, but that's, I'm pretty good at what you do, is what I'm trying to say.
I mean, most people like to wear the kayaking full vest. I still prefer the around-the-neck orange because of the chafing. It makes it a little tougher.
Yeah, if you fall off, you want everybody to find you. Well, that's good advice. I like to ask about any kind of health, emotional wellness, physical wellness, whatever. And I'm gonna look into that. I'm at least gonna hit it at the gym. I'm gonna see how it goes for me because it is a great exercise, the whole body, and no impact. And then we'll see where it goes. So thank you for that. And now let's get to your day job, which is going after bad guys, I guess is the shortest way to say it. How many different ways? Tell folks exactly kind of what you're doing right now, and tell us a little bit about your new firm that you've created with a bunch of other really smart people who speak a lot of languages. Miburo, is that how it's pronounced? You have swag.
Yeah, Miburo. It's a Japanese name. They were Ronin samurai in Japan. The company's been around for 10 years, actually. That was always my group that I just ran for projects and everything. We did the Russians in 2016. That's what we were tracking.
Right.
We used to do all kind of ISIS, when we were running projects. And so we do everything in the virtual world that's what we call malign influence, which is propaganda, disinformation that me for, and extremism. So that used to be Al-Qaeda, ISIS. Now it's people that want to overturn the election or, January 6th kind of stuff. So, the team is a couple dozen strong now. We kind of go all around the world tracing stuff. And, the biggest thing I think you and IP have talked about a lot, there is no such thing as foreign and domestic in social media or information space. And that's everything from Russia and Ukraine today to trucker convoy in Canada. Like there is a mix of Americans mixed with all sorts of other countries and other states and actors that are out there. So, we try and make the internet a safer place.
Can you say what you do on the internet to make it a safer place? Because there are certain techniques and tactics that you're all trained in and have been using in different ways and different arenas your entire career. You've obviously wrote about what you've done in the past, but as you have always helped us understand, the problematic folks, the bad people, they evolve constantly, and you have to evolve with them. So what do you do?
Right. So the big thing is on the global side, you're only looking at a few actors and the firms that they hire, troll farms. So foreign intelligence services, like today, that's in Ukraine. That's the three big foreign intelligence services. So SVR, foreign, GRU, military, FSB, internal, which is really the leftovers of the KGB, from the Cold War.
Right.
We're watching where they're putting information out. They do that around the world nonstop in lots of different languages, and they have sort of different remits, and they work with a lot of oligarchs and cutouts, which is the troll farm. There's a guy named Prigozhin you may have heard of a couple times, but he ran the troll farm in 2016, 2020. They're all over in Africa, a lot of countries. And then separately, China is just blowing it out. And, we expanded our China team. We doubled it over the last year. They are running circles around the world. They've got over 200 social media influencers talking in 24 languages nonstop.
The Chinese government.
Yeah, rewriting world history. If you stumbled onto them on, Facebook, Instagram, Telegram, any of the big platforms, you wouldn't know that's who they are. Some of them are labeled, but a lot of them aren't, and they're all working for the Chinese state media apparatus. So they're kind of rewriting the world while we fight with ourselves at home. And on domestic extremism, it's really interesting. Despite all the hullabaloo around January 6th, there's not been tons of momentum to stop the next January 6th, right? It's mostly focused on watching things broadly, what they're saying, and then waiting for violent threats to try and, help law enforcement know what they can focus on.
Well, you had a great 3-part series at Substack that you published. Where did all the insurrectionists go? Part 1, Part 2. Where has the online extremism moved over the past year? And finally, where is domestic terrorism headed in 2022? Which is, I kind of wanted to talk about some of what you said there, and also Russia, Ukraine. So I'll get to all those questions real quick. But first, the convoy seems to be where the extremism has gone. Not sure anybody predicted what happened in Ottawa and Canada, and now they're fanning the flames to have that happen here in different places in the U.S. Tell me if you were surprised by that, how effective it was, and how it was handled. It seems like it was handled strategically by the Canadian government.
Yeah. So I think let's rewind 10 years. The Occupy movement is a version of the trucker convoy, right? Except there's this fringe of extremism on the outside of it, right? Like Occupy was all like drum circles and, let's just sit here and go against the big banks. And it was never about like, let's physically destroy a bank, right? That's the difference. And where truckers very similar, they're doing an Occupy kind of thing when you look at it. But the problem is you see Nazi flags and Confederate flags and like a lot of these other sort of extremist movements jumping on board with it. And so I had done a video right after January 6th, right? So like any protest movement, you get this big ball of people, some who know each other, many who don't. And an extremist group will embed itself inside of it because it's a wonderful opportunity. You've got access to targets. You can recruit more followers. And if you do something like break in the doors of the Capitol, everybody else flows in right after you, right? They may not know the bigger plan. So this is the Oath Keepers on January 6th. I think this is the problem with a lot of these extremist groups is there's always the 5%, or so that are there to do harm to people. And that's where I think the trucker convoy thing gets out of control is if someone's got a quick reaction force loaded with weapons on the other side of the Potomac River, you got a big problem, on your hands.
Yeah, or any other major artery, from the George Washington Bridge and the Tappan Zee up where, we live to any other major artery. I mean, it doesn't seem like a very challenging thing to create. I mean, you could quietly assemble a few trucks and you could shut things down and everybody else would show up. I'm not sure how you prevent against that.
Right. It's very easy to do. And really, you're not talking about a crowd of 100, like 10 trucks could probably do it, right? You're talking about a very small group of people with outsized influence.
Can't you just arrest them and then that's it? I mean, if
the one thing that's different about like Occupy movement in a park versus trucks blocking a bridge is you are creating public safety issue usually, and that's where law enforcement can get involved. I think that's what they did in Canada, but honestly, I'm not that sure. I'm not that familiar with like what they decided was the trigger. So threats to public safety and also, other harms to society at large. That's why you can see Occupy set up in a park for months on end. And, it's not necessarily damaging all of society or government or the economy. So it's a little bit different in that sense. You could compare it back to, remember, air traffic controllers striking during the 80s and, Reagan saying, look, we have to make sure we have safe air travel over time. That's where the boundary sort of is. And there's always debate about where it's at.
So I want to ask you about what you're working on and highlighting in terms of the threats for the 2022 and every subsequent election. In your Substack piece, you talk about a number of different scenarios where a local extremist threat might emerge with respect to the upcoming election year and just our political process in general, including a stochastic attack on a candidate or election official, intimidation with weapons at polling places, newly formed election groups interfering with the conduct of elections, kidnapping plot or targeted attack against an elected official, and a militia member, Praetorian Guard for elected official. This stuff, I'm not sure how much focus there is on that. I'm not sure how much conversation it's getting in media or how much people are reading about it. But this looks like a really important place to focus and a very vulnerable group of people where you wouldn't think in the past. I mean, we're talking about election workers. We're talking about the elderly, volunteer folks. I mean, why are you so focused on this? And explain any one of these that you want.
Well, I think that's the big trend line post January 6th is don't go national and federal where you're facing off now against the FBI and all of these security services, the DHS, every state and local. Go closer to home because it's easier to intimidate somebody who is in a volunteer or very low paid job in the conduct of local or state elections. So focus closer to home. 2, coercion is very easy. And a lot of the candidates are somewhat in on this. They'll say, get in the face of the poll workers, show up to where the ballots are being cast, make yourself present. Now, that's under the veil of civil disobedience, but it is not that way when you show up with an AR-15. This is where the problem, really shakes out. I think the bigger part is the speech of elected officials or politicians saying, we need to take it to the enemy, the enemy of the state or the enemy of the people. And we need to target these people individually and coerce them or suppress them. That's where it comes down to a big problem, because in a world of mediated terrorism meaning a threat is put out, someone is picked as a target. Trump just did this, I think, in Wisconsin last week at one of his rallies. Throw out a threat. Well, if you have 100,000 people that are your adherents, if one of them takes it as true, then, they launch a violent attack. And that's that stochastic terrorism, which is very difficult to predict which of those 100,000 people will believe it or think they need to act upon it.
It really is different. You just made me reminding me of when Trump was president and he tweeted "Liberate Michigan" and a whole bunch of assholes went and did. And you mentioned, the kidnapping plot potential. Well, that happened. And I just wonder the difference between when it's the president of the United States saying that and when he's not saying that, when anybody else is saying that, when a terrorist leader, much less any other very influential politician, is saying that. The kind of weight that it holds is much different. And you're seeing that play out now when Trump is saying, if I'm elected again, I'll be pardoning everybody. Meaning, if the president, if the commander in chief tells you to do a thing, it's almost seemingly a lawful order in some people's broken brains, I suppose, most specifically his. What does it matter that he's out of office or that it's just Madison Cawthorn talking about Second Amendment solutions, much less what I think are the real dangers, the Tucker Carlsons of the world?
Yeah, they can have plausible deniability that they didn't tell that individual to do something.
Always.
But that's not how it works out in the real world. If you remember, there was a guy, Cesar Sayak, who...
Oh, I remember. Yes.
Essentially picked the NBC, CNN target list based on, President Trump's calling them fake news, fake media. We need to do something about it. And so he said, I think I should do something about it. And, his van was just plastered wall to wall with targets, basically, that were all, the opposition to President Trump. So that's where these folks try and advocate themselves in terms of responsibility. It's just not correct.
He was accused, by the way, of sending pipe bombs to prominent critics of President Trump. And he was indicted and probably going to spend a long time in jail. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. And they'll say, well, these people have mental health issues, but you can have mental health issues and still be a terrorist. In fact, that's not unusual. Yeah, I mean, that's part of the attraction to violence for a lot of these folks. And it is a form of intimidation. That's why they're doing it. And that's why January 6th is particularly damning, because he was a commander in chief. He called a mob and incited violence on his own government, that he was responsible for. And those deaths, they occurred because he essentially told them to go there. And I think that's where it's kind of interesting with him being the former president. Where are the charges, even civilly, against him? If you or I were to do something like that and cause a major incident, or think of rock concerts, right, where people are stomped to death or whatever, security isn't accurate, you see a civil case break out. I'm just curious what will happen over time with January 6th if it doesn't move more into the civil litigation space.
Well, exactly. Well, there has to be consequences and accountability, or else people continue to behave in certain ways, I think, is a shorter version of what you're saying. And we still haven't seen those consequences for a lot of people. Although, hundreds have been arrested and gone to jail. I think that's probably a good thing. But who knows what it's going to be the next time. All right. So what about, I've got to ask you about Ukraine, Russia, and your thoughts on this. Did you see that interview with the AP reporter really grilling the State Department spokesman, Ned Price, because there's this, there's been a lot of things been said by State Department of Defense over several administrations over several years that have created a massive amount of distrust among the public. And I don't think I think that's understandable given the Iraq war, specifically weapons of mass destruction and so on. But the point is, how does the State Department, the government's burden is to communicate what's in the public's interest to the public without in any way revealing sources and methods as to how they got information. I don't think they've done a good enough job doing that. I want to trust them. What do you say to the American public about how we could trust our government that there was, in fact, a fake flag operation, or they are, in fact, imminently about to attack?
Yeah, I'm with you. As a citizen, the government should have provided more information. Look, you can't just have somebody go out, because we've been through it, right? Weapons of mass destruction. Okay. And everybody went for it because it was Colin Powell, and we all love Colin Powell, and, he vouched for it. And I know for me, even personally, seeing Colin Powell, go to the UN, I was like, it must be true. Like, this must be a slam dunk, as they said. And it wasn't, right? And look at what unfolded. So I think the public is right to be skeptical. I think journalists are doing their job when they challenge on that. The U.S. government, the other part of it that I find frustrating is, if you're going to out the Russians as doing a false flag operation, your source and method has already been burned. Because if the Russians were doing that, now they know, like, okay, the Americans know this, like, we got to change what we're going to do. So your source and method is already burned. And this is when I get frustrated with the third, term of the Obama administration, which is what this is. They always try and, be too cautious and have their foot, one in the boat and one on the shore, which is they want to do something, but they don't want to go all the way because they're scared it might go bad. And so they try and do half measures both, and they get burned both directions, right? They're not tough enough against Congress. And then also they're not making a strong enough case, but they try and do some of both. And then they get beat up from both directions, and their automatic instincts is to go quiet, lock up, and just not say anything, right? And so if you're going to go all out on, hey, Russia's doing a false flag, you better show some evidence of it. You have to. And you've already burned the source, so just lean in. Like, and what is intelligence for? Like, we pay billions of dollars for all of this. If we're trying to stop an invasion where it might kill, they said estimates of up to 50,000 people, then stop the invasion. Like, just commit. Like, just do it. And if they invade, then at least you've made a strong case and you've given it your all. Instead, we're kind of doing these half measures. And it really is just about trying to play it both ways and be safe. And you can't be safe when we're trying to stop a conflict like this.
When we're trying to understand, the American public trying to understand how serious of a threat Putin is posing right now, the easiest piece of evidence, or several pieces of evidence to me, are his own history and what he has done. If you want to know if someone's going to punch you, have they ever punched anybody else, or are they just a tough talker? Well, he's done all kinds of stuff, from Georgia to Crimea to our elections and so much more. So that's a big piece of criteria, of course. But then you look at some of the reporting on the ground. You look at different countries' intelligence reporting and their opinions. It would seem right now, here as we're talking on Valentine's Day, that the American government seems to think it's imminent. But if you listen to the leaders in Ukraine, they're saying that Western media outlets or Western governments are panicking and everybody just needs to calm down. And people in Kiev are, acting pretty normally, is the reporting that I'm reading. So what are we supposed to believe? Where are we at?
So it's fascinating on a couple of examples. Television and the news tends to chase these diplomatic, like, running around. Macron goes to Putin and Putin talks to so-and-so and Schultz comes to Biden. And that's a lot of drama and theater, but it doesn't really address the fact that basically the entire Russian military stacked up on three sides of Ukraine, and it wasn't 6 months ago. That's it. And that is an invasion posture without a doubt. We also know these provocations, some of them did get broken up. There was a coup plot. It did get broken up. So I still think it could go either way, but I would say this: Putin has invested a tremendous amount already on this invasion by moving all of these forces there, and to walk away with nothing is not something that he's going to do. Diplomatically, the Russians always use diplomacy as a cover for their real actions, which is the U.S. and the West and NATO, we like to go state to state and have our diplomats run around and have meetings and talk about negotiations. And he might agree to some things now, and tomorrow he won't honor it, or he might, and he'll just change his mind whatever way, because he knows that's how the West operates. What he does know is information, military, economics, right? Economically, Germany is the linchpin for this. Nord Stream 2, Germany's highly dependent on the Russians for energy, and he knows that. That was a great window for him in terms of gaining leverage against the West. And that's why you're seeing NATO and the EU kind of debate back and forth, like, are the Americans in it or not? Trump might be back in 2 years. He seems to like Putin. Do we stay on for this now and anger Putin whenever we might get a different kind of an American position, 2 years later, because we're inconsistent? And then separately, no one really goes to Ukraine. Zelensky, I think, is trying to play a smart strategy, which is if he acts like everything's going to war, guess what happens? His economy evaporates and he's incredibly vulnerable. So they have to act. They have to, at least put up a tough stance. They got to act like they can live and survive through this. And they have been occupied, or had the idea of an occupation for a decade almost now. And in a lot of these countries around the world, when I visited them, I remember going to Africa during the counterterrorism days. If you're back in the U.S., the places I was going, they were like, it's just overrun with Al Qaeda, and right. It's a disaster. And you get there and there'd be kids playing in the street and they're listening to iTunes, right? And there's no Al Qaeda guys in a chat room, like you can't even get on the internet. Yeah, there's 4 or 5 Al Qaeda guys. There's also like a million other people that are like trying to go about their lives. And if you go ask them what they're worried about crime and malaria. They're not worried about this invasion because the invasion may not happen and this is their daily life. And I think for Ukrainians, that's a version of that too.
I think people probably do that everywhere. I had a mom of one of my daughter's friends say, I don't want you guys to go to the mall on a Saturday because that's like bad things happen. It's like, no, they don't. I mean, one bad thing happened once, but it's a way things get reported out and perceived by people. But in this case, you're talking more about, I feel like, official government channels, and that's why there's some misconception there. But so you're feeling that right now at this point, it's still probably looking like he is going to invade Ukraine?
Yeah, I would put it at 2/3, 1/3. And I would say this, Putin decides when he decides. He's not necessarily on a timetable, but he has a trajectory. He's followed it. This is a very linear trajectory all the way since you might remember last spring. They did a mobilization, which was essentially, I think, to test out things, see what the reactions would be. Now they seem firmly committed, but he's not going to walk away with it with nothing either, because that puts egg on his face, inside Russia. So a lot of the messaging that you're seeing that he puts out is that Ukraine is trying to attack them, which is a justification for war. That's the false flag. That's a lot of these other things that you're hearing. He wants to make it look like it's a defensive maneuver, when the truth is he's always wanted to take Ukraine back. Ukraine historically has been, it used to be the main seat or the capital of what was Rus, the land that eventually become Russia. So there's a lot of historical significance there. I think he still leans towards invading, but I also would not be surprised by Friday, the Olympics end on the 20th.
Right.
He just decides, it's probably not worth the cost. The oligarchs are putting pressure on me. The sanctions are rough, and he might back away from it too.
Well, I hope the latter is the scenario, and we'll see. But thank you very much, Clint, for joining me, and always learn a lot from reading you and talking to you, especially about the rowing machine. Will you videotape yourself? Will you do that? Can men our age videotape ourselves exercising and share it on social media?
I do still have an orange life vest, which I can put on, which I will do on the rowing machine.
That's what the stand-up community demands this video.
And I won't say for sure that it's not a deep fake, but I have the power to do that. I'm a very talented team.
Could be your face, could be not your face.
Could be my face, could not be my face. Maybe a life vest, maybe not.
If your team wants a break from chasing the baddest people in the world to mock up a video of you on that rowing machine, we would welcome that comedy relief. Thank you.
I'm going to tell you this. There are secret tapes, by the way, from my own home video cameras. Every time I fall, my partner Emmy, she gives them to the team and they make TikToks of me.
Yes, that's the content. That's what you need to tag onto the end of your Substacks. What are you doing with this?
I don't know. Here's the other thing is it's like every time there's an ice storm, now I walk out very cautiously. I still will fall. And half the time the cameras catch me. Yeah.
Do we have those edited into a highlight reel? You keep falling everywhere and we don't get to see it? That's ridiculous.
No, it will probably come out at some point.
Wow. I think I'm going to find it for, I got to find a workaround. I got to find a back channel into your team because this is going to be some kind of like a birthday surprise for you or something. Some kind of roast. Clint, thank you very much, my friend.
Thanks for having me on, Pete.
All right, there he goes. Clint Watts, everybody. Selected Wisdom. Check out the Substack. Check out the book. Follow him on Twitter. Support his work. Always great to have him joining me, but definitely let Clint know that you heard him right here on the show by tweeting at him at Selected Wisdom. At Selected Wisdom. Check out his Substack, which is always really good. clintwatts.substack.com. I link to all of it in the show notes. And now it's time to get to Titus, ladies and gentlemen. The great Christopher Titus. He is a hilarious stand-up comedian. He's got an amazing podcast that he's had for a long time. He's doing all kinds of stuff all the time. Directing, writing, one-man shows, you name it. And he's had, I think he said he's working on his 10th special. You can get all of his stuff at ChristopherTitus.com. Subscribe to his show. Subscribe to his YouTube, which is Christopher Titus TV. Christopher Titus TV, and learn more there. Ladies and gentlemen, Christopher Titus on the phone with me. Very big deal. Very big deal. Very happy to have him finally on the podcast and been trying to connect for a while. Thank you very much, sir, for doing this. I'm very excited to have you.
Oh, come on, man. Thank you, man. I listen to your show on Sirius all the time. I'm listening to the new podcast. You are, it's always, our podcast name is Scream Sanity, and you're one of the few people that also scream sanity. We got all the idiots screaming, psycho shit all the time. And you, the people that scream sanity are who I listen to. So thanks for having me on.
Yeah, man. Yeah, I agree. I like your language to describe kind of, I use the idea of Earth 1 and Earth 2. Like there's different realities, it would seem. But let me ask you about, without getting too obvious, too specific, like I feel like people's values have changed because of politics and because of COVID. How do we describe like a decent person anymore before we get to all the labels and everything? I'm very confused about people's morality these days.
Yeah, man, it's gone away. COVID did two things. The COVID lockdown thing, it made some people incredibly more selfish. And it also made, I talk about in my new show I'm doing my new stand-up special called Zero Side Effects. I talk about it in my new show where a lot of people, stopped. We were on this, we've been on this wheel for decades, paying the bills, work, buying something new. And then COVID stopped everybody and made people go, whoa, wait, what am I doing?
Yeah.
Why am I showing up for $2.13 an hour and praying, my God, I have good tips? Why am I doing this shite job that I've been doing for 10 years? And the boss is a dick, but I'm doing it because I'm afraid to get something new. And I think it made everybody, there was a reset to some people, and some in a good way, because they started living for themselves and their family again. And some people reset to like you vlog everybody, let's go park some trucks on a bridge like that. Like some people went that shit the other way.
Yeah, no, it's really well said. I think, you do talk about this. I've seen you talking about kind of the great resignation and people just shifting because of COVID. Has there anything that's been like drastically changed in your life? I mean, obviously as a live performer, that just shut down, but you even taped a special. You're doing everything. I mean, you're Chris Titus. You seems like the kind of guy who's just generating and constantly working, never sleeping. That's how I look at you. And so you got creative and everything, but what changed for you? Anything personally in your life, like drastically change?
My wife and I she's a comic too. We travel together. We're together all the time. And COVID made it even more so. And I had this fear of like, oh God, man, this relationship's going to fall apart. And we got tighter. We became like one. We became like one being. We made the next step is to actually have doctors actually join us at the head.
Oh, really?
Instead of having, we're so close now. And I think I don't know, man, it made me realize that I can do anything, like having the sound stage and we did sketch shows, we did live streams. Because I hated, dude, did you do any of the Zoom shows in your kitchen? Did you do any of those?
No, I did one. No, I never did an actual stand-up show. I did a bunch of corporate gigs where I changed the format from like straight stand-up to just like crowd work and interviews and games and shit, because I just I could never do that. No, I didn't. You did? Did you do it?
I did one, and then I grew a tumor on my soul. I know, it's malignant.
I
was like, never again. So then I had the sound stage. So we built a stage, and I bought lighting, and we had 3 cameras, and we shot them like I started calling them comics. Ron Funches, and we shot specials with like masked audiences, with 16 people. And we did that, and no one ever got sick. And, we shot the place with this thing called EnviroShield. Because there's no stand-up to me is so precious, and to just go, yeah, you can just do it in your kitchen. No, you actually can't. It's a horror show. It's the worst Stephen King novel I've ever seen for a comic. Bro, I'm just going to stand by myself and not okay.
So Chris, I went to one early on to see how I attended as an audience member a stand-up show, and I'll tell you exactly how I was as an audience member. I was looking at like attractive women who were also there in their like homes. All I remember is watching how much wine and cookies this one woman drank and ate. Like, I wasn't watching the comedian, so like I was just looking around at everybody else. I was just curious. So that person seems interesting. It was a bad experience. I did the parking lots where they had cars pull up. I did stand up a few of those. Those were probably even worse.
Yeah, how do we make it just as weird, but feel like something? And wasn't there one like at the beginning where people were like, you just tell a joke and then people would honk if they liked or not?
Yeah,
like I was like, what the heck? And so we just, I don't know, man. I think so let's go back to your question. What did COVID change in me? I realized that in the worst situation, I can figure out a way to make it work, and I think everybody realized that. Everybody realized, oh shit, we don't have to be this anymore. And I think that's why we're having problems hiring people. And the government's very mad because they need slaves. And some people woke up to the fact that they were.
What is your kind of like, I'm always been curious. I'm actually kind of surprised that you're so, and forgive me for this, I just always thought you were all about like psychology and behavior and your life and biographical stuff and autobiographical stuff. And I always knew you were brilliant, but like you seem really to think a lot about and be educated on politics and social issues and history. So forgive me for not understanding that. But what is your journey? Like, when did you get interested in this stuff? You were like me, like not great in high school, but that was because high school didn't fit you. It's not because you weren't smart.
Yeah, that's true. I think what happened with me was, I've watched democracy being ripped apart ever since Al Gore, conceded to an election that he fucking won.
There it is.
And I was like, wait, so all the stuff that we are told growing up about our country, freedom and rule of law, we've just watched it dismantled. And I think listen, man, I would much rather just be telling more stories, ripping my dad and my psycho mom. I would making fun of my brother. That's my bread and butter, talking about my kids and stuff. But what happened when that happened, it kind of clicked something in me where I was like, this is bullshit. What's going on? And I started writing about, it just started creeping in. Then 12 years ago, we took on the podcast, and which I did because I wanted to force myself to write 5 new minutes every week about what was happening in the world. And when that happened, the more I delved into it, the more I realized that, listen, man, here's the reality of our system right now. So all these people that in our government, it's not just that they run the government or have power. It's that they live lives of monarchs. These guys, their lunches are handled. There's 4 courses. Every day they live in a world where they have security. They have things paid for, their healthcare. They get to vote their own. Can you imagine having a job where you get to vote your own, like, job rules? You get to vote for your own healthcare. You get to vote for your own pay raise. And so I think people have not really latched on to the fact that we live in a monarchy with a mask of democracy on top of it. And that's what's going on. And I think there's some people in government that care. And I think there's some that are trying it. But I think most of all, when you see these a-holes who've done nothing, they literally don't pass legislation, but they're there for 35 years. I find that insane. So once I started to realize that, and here's my problem. Maybe you can help me. I don't know how to fix this, man. There's so few people that seem to notice it, that there's not enough people to change it. And I think that's what's freaking me out. So I fight a meaningless fight on Twitter all the time.
Well, I'm not nearly as cynical as you are about Congress specifically, much less local state houses and local politicians, Board of Educations. But I mean, specifically, like,
why? What's the hope?
Well, I'm not saying it's a hope, but because I've interviewed so many of them and I've gotten to really know them and I watch them and I do watch, for example, the legislation they pass out of the House. Like, so what I mean by too cynical is House Democrats have passed the most progressive legislation or a ton of legislation. I would argue Agreed. House Republicans did as well. I mean, they repealed Obamacare. It wasn't going through the Senate because it's a different body. And so, you know, I do know a lot of good legislators at every level doing the work for the right reasons. And I think that I just feel like it's more, I blame people for being apathetic more, to not give legislators cover so that they can create new laws like get the money out of politics, etc.
Well, I agree with that. I think the House is there's a lot more people with integrity in the House than there is in the Senate. The Senate seems to be filled. I mean, that's why when I talk about a monarchy, the Senate is the place where it's odd. And then even given the filibuster rule is, and I keep saying to people, the Dems don't want to kill the filibuster because then what happens if it goes back on them? Well, then maybe everybody would be forced to write some good fucking legislation. Maybe you guys would actually have to come up with policies that people like you, so they would keep voting you in. You couldn't, the minority
but they can't. But Chris, you know they can't come up with policies unless the moneyed interests approve it. Sure. But I still feel like it's too cynical in that, again, there's a lot of Democratic senators that I think are fantastic, including someone like Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren and many others that I can name that I think are really good as Democrats. But I feel like the Republican Party is just like, we don't have to play anymore. It's a completely different world. They just don't even believe in democracy. But hey, let's get off politics and talk about a couple of other things.
I want to talk about one more thing.
I mean, anything you want to talk about, honestly. But.
No. When you said what changed it, I remember. So, like the Kennedy assassination, I remember when democracy was assassinated. I was driving down. I remember where I was and what car I was driving. I was coming down behind Guitar Center off of near Ventura in Sherman Oaks. And my radio was on, and they had just passed Citizens United. There you go. And I was like, what the fuck? Because it's like, how do you not understand what's about to happen?
Right.
It was already bad enough. But how do you not understand
exactly
that if corporations are people, well, the people aren't corporations, and we can't afford to buy our politicians.
Right.
So that was I think that was the day that got me angry. And since then, and I've had people complain to me, Titus, you talk about your family, you're talking about politics. I'm like, you do see that democracy's falling apart, right? You do see that we're just, it's a great thing when you hear about Nazi Germany and you hear when they would talk to Germans, they go, it wasn't one thing. It was, they just kept basically shaving away things until it was gone.
Right.
And that's what's been happening.
And it's been happening. I think that's a great point, but it's been happening. It happened quick then. And people kind of didn't see it. And I think it's happening really quick now, including at the local level. I mean, I'm in the fight with the crazies at the Board of Education meetings, man. I mean, it's nuts. They're absolutely nuts.
Are you going to them?
Oh, yeah. I'm the opposition leader, at least vocally. I mean, because
get a beret. You need to get a beret and just go in and yell.
So it is crazy because as a comic, a microphone is a microphone.
Yep.
But you can't really go up to the mic at the BOE meeting and do bits, although you can't help but do one, man. Some crazy lady went up and talked about, like, at the local Board of Education meeting, talking about national politics and Biden, and it was near Columbus Day or something. And she's like, Joe Biden wants to get rid of Columbus Day. He discovered America. And I went up and I just go, listen, just quick fact check. He never even stepped foot in America. I just I thought that was true, and then I looked it up, and it's true, and I just want to clear it up. Columbus never, ever stepped foot in America, and then he just gave everybody disease, and everybody died. But moving on to the more important...
That's the problem with being with doing comedy so long. You get there's a fearlessness that comes.
Yes, you're absolutely right.
People, and that you went up and started there is awesome. But we need more of that. We need more of that, because that's when I say, scream sanity, because everyone else is screaming vitriol and hatred, and you start screaming sanity. I'm telling you, we're so dumb now. This is the problem. I knew America was dumb. I've been touring this country for a long time. Yeah. I didn't know that we were X Games dumb. I didn't know that we were like triple cork, overly top Shaun White stupid. And I don't mean Shaun White stupid. I mean the level of stuff that we come up with. There was people waiting for JFK Jr. to show up for weeks at a time.
That's right.
That's moronic. That's the dumbest shit I've ever seen.
I had heard that you were there. Is that not true?
I was not there.
Oh, I had heard. It must have been someone else.
The only time I would have been there if I was selling merch just to make some money. I'd have gone with some T-shirts. He's coming. Jay's coming.
That is really we should. Why don't we give up and sell them what they want?
Exactly. We just do a picture of JFK Jr. on a cross. He is returning.
Yeah, that is a rough and amazing image at the same time. Yeah, no, I mean, having traveled around I think that's a really important thing that people don't realize about comedians. Not all comedians, but the kind of comedians I respect are the comedians who've done every type of gig in every type of place. And you certainly are one of those combat veterans. And so what if anything did you learn that was different from how you grew up? I mean, were you introduced to a lot of cultural diversity as a young boy, as a young man, or did you learn more about it when you started traveling around doing stand-up?
No, man, I was raised in California. I didn't even understand it. Like, I was raised in Northern California, and there wasn't, there was normal BS at school, but there was never any, I didn't understand racism until I went on the road and was like, holy this is different. And that made me angry too.
Was there something like that happened? Like when you say no?
Yeah, man, well, I tell you what tuned me up. I used to tour all the time. Remember, I've been doing this since I was 19 years old. So I would tour all the time, these one-nighters, and every time I was hooked up with a black comic. And this is when everyone says racism doesn't exist, I tell them this story. Every black comic I ever worked with and did a road gig with in the car, every single one, bar none, has a story about being yanked out of their car and bounced off the hood by cops. Every single one. Not a single white comic has that story. And I mean, these are comics that don't know each other, comics from around the country. Every black comic has that story. Now, some of it I chalk up to comics are assholes. Sometimes I chalk it up to that. But most of the time, in fact, one time we were doing the Spokane Comedy Festival. I was working with Brian Copeland, a guy I've known for many years. And we're driving and we get pulled over in Montana. And I had an attitude about it because I was only doing 10 miles over. And the cop walks up and I'm like, what's your problem, dude? And he goes, what do you mean? And I go, we're doing 10 over. He goes, you're still speeding. I go, 10 over? And I start arguing with the cop. And Brian's sitting next to me, and Brian just stiffens up. And the cop goes, give me your license. And he walks back to his car. And Brian goes, what are you doing? Stop it. You're going to get a shot. I'm like, what? What are you talking about? I'm arguing with a police officer. And it was Montana, so it's the weirdest thing. At the time, the cop comes back up, and he goes, that'll be $5. And I said, what? I think this is the worst bribe ever. $5? How cheap is it to live in Montana?
He's like, you can also jerk me off, but.
and so there's a thing in Montana. Instead of making you pay the citation, they just take $5 from you. That was at the time.
Wow.
But Brian was shaken scared. He was shaken scared. So it's reality. And so I saw it all across the country. And my wife's from Louisiana and Texas, and she tells stories that are just brutal. And I to the point where I just don't get it, man. Here's the thing. It's not like we don't have history recorded and can't read how this plays out. What's going on in our country right now, it will play out badly. What's going on with Putin? What Putin's doing right now, it will play out badly. Putin's going to fuck the entire world economy if he attacks. He's going to do it. It's going to happen. And then We are in a place where history shows us what will happen, but we're not evolved enough to recognize it and fucking stop it.
Yeah.
You know, listen, here's how weird it is, Pete. In the middle of COVID, our government told us that aliens exist, and we went,
there
is something that is so high tech that our government doesn't know how to deal with it, that could kill us all in a second, probably. And we were like, yeah, just keep acting how you're acting. You know, I hope there's an alien calling. I would like them to come down and just start vaporizing just racists and douchebags.
No,
just about 300-500 and get it in the news, because it would tune all of us up, wouldn't it?
Well, I think the problem is, I've thought about this. The aliens, you would think, would unify us from, obviously, all Americans, liberal to conservative, Trump, not whatever, and not to mention the Iranians, the Egyptians, Chinese, all of us. We would be unified against the aliens, like all of the movies say we would be, except for, Chris, you know, Titus, that they'd be like, we don't think those are aliens. Those are the liberals. Tied up and they're wearing alien lizard costumes.
It's alien Tifa. That's what it is.
Exactly.
It's alien Tifa's coming.
They're fascists.
Yeah, that's another thing. Can we please listen? I don't mind arguing with anybody over politics. I don't mind arguing with someone that totally disagrees with me. But for God's sakes, would you learn what words mean? Some of the words they throw out all the time, you don't even have the definitions down, and you're calling people names that it's the opposite of what you're saying. When did that happen too? Like, stupid has become almost a badge of honor in our country. You know, I'm frustrated by it, and I don't know how to change it except, keep screaming.
Yeah, I was skiing with my brother the other day, and we saw this young dude in line. He had like a hoop earring in. He was snowboarding. He fit the whole role, And so I go to him because I was a little bit under the influence, and I just go to him. I go, hey, man. And he looks at me. He's like a 22-year-old kid. I go, hey, man, you anti-fascist? And he looks at me and he looks at my brother and he goes, hell yeah, I am. And it was like, yeah, it shouldn't be controversial. How did anti-fascist become bad? Being anti-fascist means being against Nazis. Now, if you're a young kid and you're dressing up in all black and you're vandalizing, I might disagree with your tactics, but we do agree on being against fascism, Titus.
Yeah, there you go. That's when did that become, like you said, when did it become an insult? And, people, and they always say, yeah, what happened in Portland? I go, but here's my problem with it. If a bunch of people hit the street because a cop kneeled on a dude's neck and killed him, if a bunch of people, that's what we're supposed to do. That's what this country was built on. This is not going to happen. Now, when the cops started shooting rubber bullets, people started burning stuff down. So, okay. I don't think that's cool to burn down but they went after government buildings most of the time. The police station that burned down was set with Boogaloo Boys. It's like nobody.
Yep.
And then if you bring those facts up and you show them 15 articles reporting, no, that's the part that's the most confusing. My wife and I have conversations about this all the time. How are you presented with facts and just go, nope, like this is what happened, and yet. You can't believe the facts, and you show up for JFK Jr. showing up from the dead.
Well, it's weird, isn't it? Because of all of the arguments are tribal, where they didn't used to be like vaccines. Pretty much everybody agreed on, and everybody agreed that the Russians were bad. It seemed that we thought our elections were pretty good in terms of the security of the elections, and we certainly didn't think that. There was an election like the way Trump framed this last one, but it's on fundamental things now. As you're saying, something you're watching happening didn't happen. I wonder why.
Our elections were so held as the world standard. Do you remember? Was it Afghanistan or it was Iraq? The first time they had the election, and everyone had their fingers up in the air with the ink on it. Do you remember that?
Yep.
Like they were pointing up like we voted like this, and we're now looking at it like our elections are screwed. Yet even this is another thing. Even when the guys that they believed in and backed up said flat out this election was the safest in history, they just moved past it. And hey, look, man, maybe COVID came to just get rid of it. Because look, we went through the weak first. Now it's going through the stupid. I don't know what the next level is, but it's, and this is harsh to say, but if you're dumb enough to not look. Here's how I know vaccines work, because I don't hang out with a lot of polio people. Polio pretty much got cured. None of my friends are smallpoxy. That's how I know vaccines are good. Not all my buddies are diphtheriaistic. So I'm telling you that right now,
none of them,
not a single one. Weirdly enough, because they were mandated in school to get vaccines. So to do this now, and the weird part is that we've lost control of it. When Trump comes out and goes, "You should get vaccinated. Everybody should get their booster," and he gets booed. But there's no brakes. The brakes have been cut. We're done. That's the part that scares me the most. Now you have hope, and please explain to me why I should stop buying weapons and storing food. You explain to me.
Now listen, I didn't say anything about hope. I said I'm not as cynical specifically about, the way you're generalizing about all of Congress. Now, when it comes to hope in the future, I'm the most, I think, optimistic guy. I always try to interpret things the best possible way. I still am holding out, hoping that, of course, Russia is not going to invade Ukraine, even though it seems it's inevitable. And climate change, we're somehow going to be able to avoid that. And the aliens aren't going to attack all of it. I try to remain hopeful, but it's hard. It's hard. So what do you do? How do you remain? How do you go? You're just knocking work out constantly. I get it that you're in this amazing relationship. Are you finding joy?
Yes, I will tell you this. We just did. You were talking about the rest of the country and racism. It's weird because I broke a Amerigeddon in Alabama. It was in Alabama, Huntsville, Alabama, which is rednecks and rocket scientists. It's a weird town to perform in. And I broke in this new one, Zero Side Effects, all about the vaccine conspiracies and everything. And I broke that in Arkansas. And so I try to go out and make sure that my joy is getting out there and confronting it. And I got to tell you, man, I did this whole bit because here's what people don't think. They hear all these conspiracies and no one sits down and maps it. Just map it out. Okay, let me buy your little thing. They're injecting a tracking chip into you to control you. And I simply just go, why you? You work at TJ Maxx. Are you a secret agent shirt folder? Why track you? It's like, and I was on stage in Arkansas. I was breaking the show in. It was still on my computer, my prompter, and I was reading it. And I started doing the bit about, and I basically tracked the vaccine conspiracy all the way to the end. It takes about 6 minutes to go through what it means. And these guys who, when I started the bit at the beginning, were pissed. They were like, this liberal fuck. And by the end of the bit, they had all unfolded their arms and they were kind of looking at the table like, I'm an idiot. Yeah, you're a fucking idiot. Do you get it? And so the biggest thing we've lost is logic. What you just pointed out. It's tribal. And when it's tribal logic, but every time through history this has happened, we're not evolving and it goes sideways. We have a record of what has happened when this happens and we're not changing it.
Right.
I think that's my biggest frustration. But what I did get recently, I had a near-death experience at the dentist.
What? For real?
Dude, I had, it's the whole last 10 minutes of my show was about it. I had dental surgery, and in the middle of it, he was pulling a molar, which I'd never had before. Like, next time someone says you got to pull a molar, I'm like, nah, kidney transplant. Don't pull a molar, kidney transplant. And because it hurt that bad and it was crazy. And then in the middle of him, as he got the molar out, he cleaned the hole in my jaw out and my ears started buzzing. And I stopped the dentist and I go, my ear buzzing. And he goes, what? And he goes, I'll give you more nitrous. So he cranks the nitrous up. Dude, next thing I know, I'm standing outside my body looking at me on the operating table. And I went through the building. I floated through I'm not making this up, dude. I floated through the sky. I went to space and I really got clear. And I had this moment. I don't know if I died or if it opened my third eye. I don't know what happened. But in the middle of dude, this is the weird, I tell this whole story in my show. Cause when it happened, I told my wife I had the ending to my next show and she was just mad because she's a comic too. And she's like, now you have the closer.
That's hilarious.
She was so mad. And what I got is that, listen, we can all bitch, we can all complain, and none of us is going to be remembered. We remember maybe 300 people in history, maybe. So of the billions of people on this planet, the whole point, like you said, I do try to have hope. I do try to bring positivity to it. We're all mad about stupid shit. God, we're so mad about stupid shit. And what I really got it's not going to make a bit of difference we get a blip of time and a few desperate breaths on a tiny rock hauling through an ever expanding universe. And that's all we get. And no one's going to remember and no one's going to care. So why aren't you having fun? Why are you upset? Why do you have anxiety about tomorrow when everything you've worried about has never happened? Dude, you lost that job at Sirius. And I remember seeing your tweets. You were upset. And now you're running your own thing. It's like, why are we? I had this weird epiphany about it. So I sound upset. I sound angry, but it cleared the anger about it. And it just gave me the facts. So now when you see me on Twitter coming up with something and just slamming people with facts or articles or whatever the proof is, I'm free now. I'm just trying to get morons. I'm just trying to leave it a better place because I'm going to leave and no one's going to remember anyway. I'm just going to trying to leave it a better place now. That's all I'm trying to do.
Well, I like everything that you just said, and it's all helpful and thoughtful, and it's crazy what happened in the dental chair. I wonder if your wife is so desperate.
My biggest epiphany in life was not years of stand-up, meeting thousands of people. It was literally high on nitrous and had a near-death experience. And my other dentist, I went to and told him what happened because I wasn't sure what happened. I go, what happened? And he's Russian, and he goes, well, we call that a dip. I go, a dip? And he says, yeah, you dipped into unconsciousness, maybe a little death. Maybe a little death is what he said, dude.
No, that's not a phrase. That doesn't translate well. That is hilarious. Maybe a little bit. You might have had a little bit of death.
And here's what I said to him. I go, a little bit of death. And this is the phrase that ended up in the show. He says, he's very pragmatically Russian. And he goes, you're here now.
That's really, he sounds like basically the philosophy that you just articulated. You're here now. I mean, you're here now. So stop worrying about that, the fat that you just floated out of your body and above the hospital into space.
Yeah. What I got about it is I'm no longer mad about yesterday. And I'm no longer freaked out about tomorrow. I really got that. It sounds so trite.
No, it's good. It's exactly. I think that there's so many different ways to phrase that kind of mindfulness, but I think they're all great. I think they're all worth reminding ourselves of. Are you in any kind of like a self-help guy at all, or have you is there a book? Is there a driving force for Titus?
Yeah, I did the Landmark Forum years ago.
Oh, yeah, I've heard about that. I heard it gets a little crazy, a little overbearing.
No, I think people take it. Listen, so I had this friend that was, he was opening for me on the road. And I'm like, yeah, and he's funny. And we started talking cars and I go, new NSX, this is 91 NSX. I got NSX is a cool car. He goes, I have one. He's the opening act. And I'm like, bro, shut up. And he's like, no, I have one. We go in the parking lot and he points to it and I go, open it. Cause I didn't believe he's the opening act. He's making $50 a set, if that.
Right.
And he opens it and I go, and he throws me the keys and goes, drive it. We get in this car and I'm like, dude, are you a drug dealer? What are you doing? And he says, I'm a doctor. I wanted to do stand-up comedy so I could speak better about what I do. So we became friends. And he kept saying, do this thing. I'd bitch about my dad or my past. And he'd go, do this thing. I'll have to do it. And it did feel like pressure. It felt like pressure, but only because he was trying to give me pretty much what I got out of it was the key to the universe. Here's what I got out of the forum. In 3 years after I did the forum, 2.5 years, I had a contract for my own TV show that I wrote and produced. I'd already had 2 deals before that. Since then, I'm on my 10th comedy special. I've written, produced, and started my own film. I just got a directing job for another movie. And all the forum did was all that shit that got in my way. And it's not overbearing. You just sit there for 3 days and listen. That's basically what you do. And people get up and share. I think people making you take it feels like pressure. But, I've had so many people take it and no one's ever sent me a toaster. I don't make any money off it. I just have my friends living in a world that they're just stoked about. In fact, one of my friends who took it spoke at the White House twice during the Obama administration. And because of the forum, started the nation's biggest blood drive called Battle of the Badges between firemen and police that the Red Cross finally took over.
Wow.
So, yeah.
So do you still go to those workshops?
I did. Sometimes I go once in a while. It's not like here's the great thing about it. It's not Scientology. You take a class, you pay for it, you do the class, you're done. I started a charity out of it. Do I go back? No, you don't need to. Once they give you this stuff, they're like, go out in the world, go make the world better.
Wasn't it founded by Mike Lindell, the MyPillow guy?
No, Jesus
that's not true. That's not true.
No, who said that?
Nobody. I'm just going through your Twitter timeline, and I saw this funny thing about Mike Lindell. So I just said that.
It was. So no, it was. I think it was Werner Erhard. He sold it to this company, and it's a dude. It's just I don't even know what I'm talking about. I don't like. We don't talk to. I just take the course. If I want to go do a course, I will. But I'm trying to get my daughter's a musician. I'm trying to get her to take the advanced course right now, so she can actually. It frees you up, dude, to become anything you want to be. Dude, I'm a DF student. I have a Writers Guild nomination, and I didn't go to college.
Yeah, but that's like talk about that. I know that about you. You always, and I think we're similar that way. I really do. Yeah, and I don't know how. I'm sure we come to things differently, and I wonder what that is for you. This idea that a formal education is somehow required. I mean, what you have is talent and thoughtfulness and obviously humor and vulnerability, but I've always just seen you as a guy who's just gritty, who hustles, and I'm wondering how you've gone about that and how much emphasis you put on that, because you can go to all the colleges you want and not know how to talk to people in a meeting or how to, get up when you get knocked down. Did I just break into a Sugar Ray song?
I think so. I think you did.
My fault. Sorry, everybody. I don't really know music. What explains your hustle?
Oh man. What explains my hustle?
Am I right about you? You never stop.
I think fear and desperation, as always. I've had my own business since I was, 19, 20 years old, if you think about it. And so I've always had to get up every day and make the next thing happen. And when I wanted to learn how to write scripts, I couldn't afford college, my dad was me. My dad wrote, me and my dad used to get in fist fights in the kitchen. So I just started reading books on writing scripts, and I started writing scripts and on my own. I read everything I could. When I work with writers or I'd work with comics, I got great advice from comics that were also writers. And it's all coming down to applying yourself. When the COVID happened and we did our first live stream and we did okay with it, we made money. I turned to my wife and said, this money we made, I want to invest in cameras. I want to buy a switcher and I want to turn it into a TV station so we can do this broadcast. Yeah. Thank God I have a great partner. And she said, okay, I don't know, man. I don't know, man. What else is there to do except keep doing what you do, man? When you say my grind, even when I write a new show, I practice a new show. I get on stage, I do it, don't write, I get that show done. And then once it's over and we film it, the next day I start writing a new show.
Well, let me ask it to you this way. I'll get real serious on you. And I know you're cool with it. Like, what's the lowest you've been or get now? And how do you get out?
I start working harder. So my dad put into me many years ago, I have this, all right, fucker, I'll show you. I have that comes up instantly. Like if something bad happens, okay, fuckers, is this how it's going to go? Watch this. That comes up a lot, which is not the best way to operate. It's kind of a bankrupt system, but that's my initial thing. And then I just start off. The forum taught me to operate out of a future. So when I designed Titus, I was like, I'm going to create a television show that caused a paradigm shift in the way people see their dysfunctional lives. That's the idea it started with. And I just started heading towards that, talking about my life. When I did Special Unit, like everything I write has to have a point to it. Like Special Unit, the movie we did, which is on Amazon Prime, by the way, go enjoy it. Wait, there's a funny school shooting in it. Yeah, I wrote a funny school shooting. Nobody dies. I'm not kidding, dude. So Special Unit was to cause a paradigm shift in the way people saw disabled people. There's no special little heroes in that movie. There's no wise sage guy in a wheelchair who needs to be protected. They're all badasses on their own. So I find that if you pick an idea, I always pick an idea, forum time, pick an idea that's bigger than you and other people will jump on. Yeah, and Martin Luther King did that. Not that I'm just saying that, but that was a big idea. That's what they used as an example. Martin Luther King said, we're going to change this. We're going to change racism in America. And that's a big enough idea where people can jump on. Everybody that want to get involved in the Special Unit movie was like, oh man, yeah, all the disabled organizations and stuff. Everybody's happy to get involved in it because we were trying to do something different. So I just try to pick something. I stopped working for myself. I'm always working for myself. I want to make money. I want to be successful. But I stopped. My idea is not what can I do to make Christopher Titus successful. A phrase that came to me years ago was if you chase money and success are like a really super hot chick that just runs from you at the club. But if you chase excellence, money chases you. And then again, trite things that are true no matter when you say them.
Trite things that are true no matter when you say them. I like that phrase as well.
Yeah. It's funny because sometimes I sound like, it's like, when did I turn into like a fucking meme? But I hear myself talk. But that's how I live, man. Because you've always been working, you've always been doing all kinds of really interesting work. I like to especially talk with men about like what role money plays in their life as a motivator. At this point in your life, like how much do you need and why do you need it? And what's like been your relationship like with money? Oh man, money. Well, here's the weird thing, man. In the forum, first of all, it was all about money for years. And then I got divorced, and you get divorced from a psychopath, and money, gets taken very, very, money stopped. But the forum kind of teaches you it's not, don't, again. So I have to work, I have to eat, I have to pay for my house, but it's all about the money will come if I just keep chasing excellence. It's just, right. And whether my idea of excellence is, it's so funny because everybody has a fucking opinion about everything now. If I'm just chasing what inspires me, money follows that. If I do something for money, the money slows down and runs out. It's really weird, man. It's a different vibe. How about you, man? Like that serious gig. That was a tough moment for you. What happened with you? No, dude. No, it was just, I laughed. Your tweets. I'm like, we need to have an intervention on Pete right now. I appreciate that. I do. I laughed because it was an understatement, a tough moment. No, it was, I had a pretty good ride in my life and in my career. My career went just as I directed it. It just kept going better and better and better. And then I got really happy being there, and, it's a corporate gig, but I like to tell comics this story about how I walked up to shortly, about maybe a few weeks after I lost the gig. I saw Russ Maneve. Do you know Russ? No, but good to explain. Very funny comedian, been around forever. Right. And I started complaining that I'd lost my gig. He's like, "How long were you doing that?" I go, "I was 14 years. I was at Sirius." He goes, "You had a 14-year gig and you're sulking around?" Which gave me great perspective, and a lot of things did. But yeah, no, I climbed out of it. I just worked 7 days a week. I figured out all the things I had to do. I built the shed, and luckily enough of the audience has come with me to be able to continue to do it. So hopefully I can keep them. By the way, that you just described what the same guy does when he has a manifesto. Yeah, I got Sirius built and I built a shed. It's always a guy that's about to. Yes. Don't get me wrong. I've made all kinds of plans in this shed to fight fascism. Yes. What do you think about comedy now, though, man? It's weird because there's so many people that don't want to talk about politics, and yet if you look at the history of comedy, like Will Rogers and Mark Twain, and Moms Mabley. I think someone like you will be able to do whatever you want to do to an extent because you're very strong on stage and you're just going to barrel through it. It's a matter of, do you want to? So I guess the question is, where are you performing? How divided are people on these very serious issues, and how much do you want to point to them, and how much do you just want to stay away from the more divisive issues and show everybody a good time, which is kind of like where my opinion is. So when, someone was at Whitney Cummings talked about defined comedy the other day, I was like, no, comedy is just funny. If it's a commentary, if it's speaking truth to power, fine. But you don't have to be some social justice warrior. It just has to be funny. That's how I feel. What about you? So you don't like to drag people through a scary haunted house of emotion, is what you're saying? At the end. I wait till the end. After we've had a good time, those last 10 minutes, I let my values out, and then I don't get invited back. No, but so it's weird, man. So if you look at my specials, I'm on my 10th one. It's always personal, then social, personal, social, personal, social. It's not like I just started doing this. I mean, my second special was called Fifth Annual End of the World Tour, about the world coming apart, in 2007, 2000, and 9/11. It was about 9/11 and stuff, and having kids right after 9/11. And so I've always done it. The problem was we weren't as divided. So when I did it, people were like, "Oh, he's talking about what's going on in the world." Trump separated us. He cleaved us in two. in a way that I think Obama did, because people's racism got amplified. So now when you do politics, it's not just you're being a social commentator or we all can't agree that we for some reason now in America, we can't agree that a guy who tried to flush classified documents or stole them and took them to his resort, we can't agree that that's bad. And that's weird. That's really, we can't agree that a guy who said, I want you to go to the Capitol and fight. Yeah. And the Boogaloo Boys and whatever the 3%ers are there. We can't agree that that's bad. That's a weird place for society. Yeah. That's the beginning of the end for a society. So now when anybody does politics, and I'll bet it was the same in like 67 through 72 about Vietnam. I'll bet it was like that too. People got really weird. But I just talk about what's going on. And I think the way you approach it is, I always approach it like this. This is absurd to you, isn't it? But here's what happens. So two things happen either when I'm really harping on it. Like when I'm doing the show Zero Side Effects about how stupid people are for not getting vaccinated. I say at one point in the show, I'm like, hey, if you're not a person that wants to take a vaccine to stop a disease that's killed 6 million people on the planet and almost 1 million in our own country, I'm okay with you not being here. Thanks for clearing the parking lots for the rest of us.
Yeah.
Because the reality is you're the reason the aliens don't fucking land. They're scared of you. So that
hilarious.
That takes 55 minutes. So here's what happened last week. I was on stage last week, and this guy tattooed up. He's wearing his Civil War reenactment beard. He had everything going on but he was off to the side of the stage so everybody could see him. And he was laughing with his friends. And because I have this weird thing because of my past talking about my screwed up white trash family, those people come to my show, and it's just great because they're great people a lot of times. This guy, I don't know if this guy maybe he wasn't at the insurrection, but he had booked a ticket. Let's just say it that way. So I get to the bit about I'm doing the bit about the COVID thing, and he'd been laughing the whole show. And as I get into this bit about the COVID conspiracy, the tracking chip thing, and try to explain and run people through what that would actually take, the audience is howling. And Saturday at first show, and this dude, just as I'm keep glancing at him, and he's just tightening up, dude. You could feel the anger coming off the guy. And this show's going great. And I finally turned to him because I'm stupid. And I go, dude, you okay now? And he goes, why don't you say something fucking funny? And the audience went nuts. Well, yeah. And as a comic, what do I do now? Do I turn? So I just turned on him, man, and just started thrashing him. Now the audience, I was killing. I'm getting applause break after applause break with this bit. And this guy he just came apart, and I thrashed him, and they finally kicked him out. And the weirdest thing about when he kicked out, and here's where I think there's a break. I think we're going to pull back towards normal. And here's my hope. As he's walking out, I didn't ask him to get thrown out. They just went over to him, and he wasn't even being that mean. It wasn't that bad. You and I have been on stage where that guy needs to get kicked out.
Yeah,
right?
For sure.
You were like, holy shit. So this guy, he goes, well, they're kicking me out. And I go, oh man, I'm sorry, man. You've been so helpful to the show. Big laugh. And he laughs. And he goes, man, I got to be honest with you. You're really funny. And then he fist bumped me, and they took him out. Oh, it was such a weird moment. And that's why I think that was the first time I thought, okay, we're all starting to, and then if you look at the polls with Trump, people are going, 49% of people want somebody else on the Republican side. 49% of Republicans or 50% of Republicans say, no, we don't want Trump to run again. That's just going to keep getting worse in the next 3 years. So I think we're getting better. I think it's going to be okay. But you have to, dude, our job, Mark Twain, go down the list. Our fucking job as comedians is to number one, funny first. I live with that. Even if I'm going to go hard at someone politically, I better be funny about it, because no one wants to be lectured. But the B side of that is you have to find a way in to see, because there's a lot of people that don't think about it like you and I think about it. Comics have a different way of looking at things. That's why we make money. That's why comedy is so precious to me. It's actually priceless to me. Do you understand how crazy you have to be, dude, to walk into a room of people? You have to walk into a room of people, think you're the funniest, most charismatic, most likable person in a room full of 400 strangers. That's serial killer shit.
Yeah, well, it's something. It's something different for everybody, but the idea that it's gotten to the place that you're describing so well for people, I mean, will you're obviously continuing to touring. You're touring right now, but it's something you got always
zero side effects. Yep, doing zero side effects.
Don't people know you pretty well at this point to know kind of at least where you're going on things like Trump or COVID, that they're not going to be, or do you think they come just to be dicks?
No, I don't have that because I am not a shrinking violet.
Exactly.
If you turn on me, I'll be like, okay, I don't have any issue with you taking me on. Because I don't write it. I'm not giving anybody disinformation. this is the facts. So, and I add a punchline to them. I've had audience heckle, like let's say someone shows up like that, their friend brought them, and someone's like, dude, I didn't get paid to see a bunch of political bullshit. And I've had this where people go, dude, do you know who you came to see? I've had the audience heckle itself, so I'm fine with it. But then again, my next show is called Carrying Monsters, because I never got to do it. So that was a show I did over COVID. So we're going to take it out and we're going to dust it off, and I'm rewriting it. And it's all personal stuff about my life, my sister's suicide, how we got through it. And there'll be no politics in it. You know, I'm not a political comedian, man. I'm just, this is just what's currently happening in the world.
Yeah. Well, I really appreciate you hanging out, talking with me. And, I've always admired you and looked up to you. And
you too, man, you too. You had the balls. Here's what I love about you. You've always had the balls, which is what I try to do, to at least confront it in a way that's amusing. You're not just ranting and bitching. You're actually trying to go, isn't this stupid to you guys too?
Yeah.
And that's a difference that'll change things and get people.
Well, they tell you at the beginning, certainly on radio, I don't think that this is a stand-up thing that you're supposed to. When I first started, they said that someone criticized me for saying the phrase, I don't know, on the show. Because you're always supposed to know. You're the host. You're the teacher. Right. And I was like, no, that's not the show I'm doing. The show I'm doing is I'm here in class with everybody else learning from my guests, and I'm the class clown. So I'm like doing annoying interruptions and shit. But we're here to learn from this person. Like, I don't know what the answer to. That's about infectious disease. What the hell do I know what you're talking about?
All right. Well, that's why I think Bill Burr did the best job I've ever seen deal with Rogan. That was really interesting to watch.
Yeah.
He said, Bill just goes, hey, you're not, I'm listening to doctors. You're not a doctor. And he goes, I'm not even fucking doing this. I'm not a doctor. You're not a doctor. Shut up. And I was like,
yeah,
fucking brilliant.
Yep.
That's exactly.
Yep. We should do that more with our friends and family.
Shit.
Goes well.
Dude, thanks for having me on.
Yeah, absolutely, man.
If I talk too much, I apologize.
No, not at all. That's what you're here to do. And I love listening to you and watching your show on YouTube, and all the links to that in the show notes. Chris Titus, everybody. Thank you so much, pal.
Thanks, brother. I'll talk to you, Pete.
Stand up. All right, how about it, everybody? Christopher Titus. I really like that. I'm not sure about that landmark stuff. I've heard bad stuff, but hey, if it works for him, if it works for you, I don't care what works. If it gets you through your day, through your week, if you're not hurting anybody, I just don't know enough. I've heard different things, but let me know if you have thoughts on that or anything else that you've heard here on the podcast. I always want to hear from you. StandUpWithPete@gmail.com is my email address. StandUpWithPete@gmail.com. If you're not already a paid subscriber, join us now. Come on over. StandUpWithPete.com, StandUpWithPete.com. But right now, it's time to wrap it up. And John Carroll singing us out. Take it away, brother.
Stand up, stand up. No need to point your rifle to defend your town. Just stand up, stand up. You know they can't deny you what you're laying down. Boy, you better stand up, stand up. Show your face of every color, yellow, black, red, and brown. This is the place where every lost child will finally be found. There's only one thing to do before we stand our ground, and that's stand up, stand up. Well, the founding fathers saw a land for all. They had to stand up, they had to stand up. They had a keen imagination for a crystal ball, drawing all the plans of stand up. But all they had to go on was the time they were in, with other causes for laws, and since they weren't even sin, they knew that change was gonna come before the change could begin. They had to stand up. All right, they had to stand up. We got to stand up. We got to look the devil square in the eye. We gotta let him know it's his time to go and make it clear when all we hear is a lie. Why you lying awake wondering where the money all went? It'll be the cost of freedom that'll go unspent. You can see him flee the scene of that experiment if you stand up. Alright, we got to speak up, we got to reach up and raise your voice in every way you know how. Don't be toes up, you got to show up. Ain't no better time to do it but now. No need to pledge allegiance to no wanton tribe. Rise up, show obedience to the voice inside. And listen well and it'll tell you not to run and hide. It says stand up. Stand up. Stand.